Hey guys, and welcome back to Social Studies with Miss Wardell. So, we are going to work on page 94 today. This is just going to be real quick. We're going to continue to look at what we've learned so far and use what we have to answer some questions. On page 94 at the top of our rapid recall, it says write the region where each type of American Indian housing was mainly used and circle the one most likely to have been used in the Tennessee area. Okay, so I remember with this Tennessee area, um, we are in the south, right? We're in the southeast. So I'm going to go to those southeast um, North American Indians, which started on page 89, right? So they're on page 89. I'm going to look at their housing real quick. So with their housing and shelter, it said that they used things like thatch roofs for keeping out water, and the summer houses where they made buildings styles known as wattle and daub. So here was an example of that. So it did say they used longhouses, but which one would they primarily use? Meaning, which one did they use the most often? Well, it says summer houses were often made with this style. So I know that those southeast North American Indians really used that wattle and daub. So I'm going to put southeast. And I'm going to circle it because this was what they primarily used in our Tennessee area. You're going to come up with the longhouse and the teepee and tell me who did that? What type of Indian regions used those? With our key concept points, we're going to answer some questions. So number one says, how do we know how American Indians adapted to their environment? How do we know? That's a good question. Well, I know we talked about this, but maybe we could go back and look at the beginning of our chapter, right? When we first start talking about these indigenous people, right? So it says the first people to come to the Americas were also known as America's indigenous people. These are originally in this area, or native. At first, these early American Indians lived in the northernmost regions. We've learned that in reading as well. And of North America. They hunted large mammals like the woolly mammoth. We found out that they crossed over through the continents of Asia and over some ice. At the end of the Ice Age, American Indians needed to adapt, and they did. They spread out across North America and South America, and they settled in many different environments. They formed hundreds of tribes and nations with many different ways of lifestyle. Okay, so we know that. Let's keep reading, because I don't know anymore yet. I don't know. Remember, we're looking for how do we know how American Indians adapted to their environment? Like, how do we know? We say that we can read this, but back then they didn't have books saying, oh, this is what we did. What made us today realize that? Okay, let's look. So here on this subheading, it says American Indians used resources. That's great, but it doesn't tell me about the environment, does it? Let's keep reading and looking. Oh, so this subheading says different environments, different ways of life. Now this might tell me how we know. The physical environment in which they lived affected how different indigenous groups met their needs and wants. different physical environments resulted in different ways of life. We know that because they each had different types of homes. Archaeologists have discovered the remains of American Indian settlements throughout the Americas, including right here in Tennessee. Oh, so they left behind artifacts, right? And remains. So here I could put that. I can spell archaeologist, so I know that I can say archaeologist, ARCHAEOL, OGIST, IST. So archaeologists found remains. Right? So they found remains of American or Native American having lived there. So archaeologists found remains of Native Americans and how they lived. So, like, for example, if they know about their houses, they must have found houses, right? So that's what they mean by remains. They must have found those houses, the remaining houses. How might someone in the future one day learn about us? Well, could they find our remains, like our houses and things that we had? Yeah, of course they could. So they could look at what we've left behind. They could look and maybe study what we left behind and see how we adapted. Period. Alright, last but not least, on critical thinking, it says some American Indians in Tennessee had summer and winter houses. Why? So, over where we found out that they had winter houses and what type of houses they had, this Wattle and Daub, well, it also told about why they had them, okay? So I do want you to do this. I'm going to give you the clue. It's going to be on page 90, but I want you to do this part, okay? So I'm going to circle this part, and you're going to tell me why, and it's page 90, why it is that they had different types of winter and summer houses. Why did they have different types of winter and summer houses, okay? Did it have to do with the environment, the temperature, where they lived? What was it? Alright guys, I'll see you next time. Goodbye.